What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today here to talk about my Week 15 NFL Power Rankings. Another exciting week of the regular season. We're getting that much closer to the postseason, so much so that starting this week we get Saturday football, which I'm super excited about. Hopefully you guys are excited for these power rankings. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Houston Texans, battled tough against Dallas, but ultimately you do lose that game. You get to see a little Jeff Driscoll, you see a little Davis Mills. That was a little interesting, but good to see Dameon Pierce continue to pick up on the momentum he had last week. Good to see him get back to kind of being one of the better young running backs in football. So I've had him in fantasy teams too, so that certainly helps. But yeah, Houston's 32. That's kind of where they should embrace being, which I say every week. Bears, they were on bye, so we'll kind of skip over them. Broncos, they kept it interesting. And, Russell Wilson, when you look at the box score, maybe this is his best game as a Denver Bronco, maybe. And then, you get Brett Rippon in there. Yeah, so kind of a weird, situation with, the Russ concussion protocol. Is Rippon going to be able to play next week? I don't know. But, it's interesting. As encouraged as I was with Denver and actually having some offensive production, a couple quick scores in the mix to make it interesting, especially after, they fell behind by 2 scores. It felt like, okay, well, this is where the Broncos, fade away now. But they battled back. I wish their defense could have, held their own a little bit. That was actually the matchup I thought they had, a little bit of a solid footing against Kansas City with, that defense be able to slow down Kansas City's offense, but it actually became, Denver's offense was able to move it pretty well against Kansas City defense. So a little bit of a change going into that game from what my notion was entering that contest. Moving on, Raiders down 4 spots. That might be a little harsh here, but when you're 0-4 in games in which you lead by 13 points, I'm going to have to be a little harsh on you here. So, when they're throwing the ball to Devontae Adams, things go really, really well. When they stop doing that, things seem to go awry. I wonder why. So, incidental rhyming there. Their defense is still a train wreck. Yeah, and Josh McDaniels is 0-4 in games as a Raiders head coach where they lead by 13. I mean, need I say more? Panthers actually a solid win. This was one where actually in the Picks League, me and my co-host for the Hurry Up Offense every Thursday comes out at noon. Mason and JT, we were all on Seattle in the Picks League, but I had a sneaky suspicion that the Panthers would keep that game close to be able to cover, which I went that way in the Picks League because obviously Carolina wins outright and 244 yards on the ground. I just felt like Seattle has had such a hard time stopping anybody in the run game that Carolina had enough talent in the backfield to be able to take advantage of that, and that they did. Then we get the Falcons. They're also on bye, but exciting news. Next week, we get to see Desmond Ridder, so I'm excited to see what that third-round rookie is all about. Then the Rams have a couple spots. And, I mean, hey, Baker Mayfield. Welcome to, primetime television, man. I mean, those last 2 drives, and specifically that 98-yard drive to end the game, If you're a football fan, regardless of like who your favorite team is and what you maybe think about Baker, or what you maybe think about the Raiders, whatever your biases may be in that individual game, that drive was awesome. And those 2 drives from Baker were awesome. Just to see him, kind of scorched to earth, go win that game for the Rams, who really should not have even been in that game. And it kind of goes back to the Raiders conversation of like, man, you had this 2-score lead from pretty much the beginning of the game onward. And you just never got that nail in the coffin. They never put the Rams away. They kept the door ajar. The Rams take advantage of it. And obviously, Baker comes up pretty clutch. And this is as big of a clutch moment he's had in any career. And it's definitely like the game where I leave it happiest that I saw Baker play that well. So really cool story for him getting there in 48 hours. And hey, good on the Rams. They're going to showcase they're going to continue to keep teams tough. And I mean, when you don't have your first round pick, why not? Then the Steelers down a spot. I was kind of surprised Pittsburgh was favored. Yeah, they're at home, and yeah, it's Tyler Huntley instead of Lamar Jackson. But I don't know. The Steelers-Ravens rivalry is just always close. And obviously, losing Kenny Pickett to concussion protocol is obviously a tough blow because Mitch Trubisky finds a couple of defenders, a couple of big turnovers there. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen were giving the Steelers headaches all game long, excuse me. And the Steelers defense had they had enough defensive stops, but. Yeah, unfortunately, the offense took a step back with, Mitch Trubisky being in instead of Kenny Pickett. So not enough stops ultimately for the Steelers defense. But, that felt like a Ravens-Steelers game of old right there. And a battle between backup quarterbacks, which is always kind of fun. Next up, we get the Jacksonville Jaguars into the top 24. Trevor Lawrence continues to play a great brand of football, man. Over the last probably 4 weeks, he's had 4 really solid games. And, I mean, his box score from this one is banana land. So carved up a, Titans defense is susceptible through the air. Good to see Trevor Lawrence have that type of game and, big Christian Kirk performance, big Evan Ingram showing. This is the game that gives Evan Ingram a 1-year contract every offseason. So this is his game. Good on him. But yeah, ton of credit to the Jags and got enough defensive production, create a couple turnovers like the picture on your screen. So, where that's kind of evaporated since the beginning of the season, this offense really has been able to pick up for maybe what was lost from that defense beginning of the year. Colts were on a bye, so we'll skip over them. Cardinals, they lost, but they also lost Kyler Murray on their first drive. So to be pretty much, I don't want to say their chances of winning, because Colt McCoy is a decent backup. Their chances of winning didn't exactly evaporate, but in my eyes, I wasn't going to penalize them for, at least if you have a week to prepare with Colt McCoy going to be the starter, right? Like if you know Kyler's going to miss the next game, you can prepare for that. You can plan for that. You can create a script for him. When you're anticipating Kyler Murray, then you have to toss it to Colt McCoy. That's such a different setting, especially then going against, Bill Belichick. And, Bill Belichick's had a bad track record against mobile quarterbacks. I think that game might have played out differently. Long story short, if Kyler is in that game. So I'm not going to ding the Cardinals too much here. Then we get the Browns. They lost too, but Deshaun Watson took a step forward. They kind of kept it close. They hung around with the Bengals. I'll give them some kudos there. I still think head to head, I take the Browns over the Cardinals. Commanders were on a bye, so we'll skip over them at 20. Saints same thing at 19. Giants did lose and they lost in big fashion, but I still think they're probably a better team than the Saints, and then we'll get a good look at them and the Commanders on Sunday Night Football this upcoming week, which I will actually be at that game. So going to be excited to see that game play out in front of my eyes. So then we get the Bucs here at 17. That was brutal. That game was so ugly. The defense had no answer for, the Shanahan offense, all the firepower they have, the skill position groups. Really the only thing that went wrong for San Francisco in that game was Deebo Samuel getting hurt. So all that to say, not a lot went right for Tampa Bay. Play calling was off. Tom Brady looks pretty lethargic. It's just tough time to be a Bucs fan. Sorry, we'll leave it on because I feel bad talking about it. It's just kicking a man while they're down. Packers were on a bye, so they'll stay here at 16. The graphics should say 16. Fire the graphics guy, I guess. Then we get the Titans down a spot. They got wiped off the face of the earth by the Jags, low key. Then late push. They keep that. The score is a little closer than what it actually was, but yeah, that Titans defense got torn apart, which is weird because. Yeah, they've had a ton of injuries, and the secondary hasn't been great, but Mike Vrabel's been able to, for the most part, hold that core together. So, yeah, tumultuous time there in Tennessee. You fire John Robinson, and then this type of game against Jacksonville, and also a game where normally Derrick Henry runs all over the Jags. That was not the case this week, not in any sort. But, so a little bit of a weird time there for the Titans, and maybe a little bit of a unshaken ground that they're standing on right now, or shaky ground they're standing on. You know what I mean? Lions next up to 14. They continue to play really good football, especially on the offensive side. I mean, 5 straight games where they scored 25 or more? First time the Lions have done that since 1954. I mean, Ben Johnson, there's a reason he's getting a bunch of head coaching hype, and there's a reason there's a lot of Lions fans saying, hey, we don't need a quarterback at the top of the draft. I mean, like Jared Goff and the pieces we have in place are getting the job done. Now, I still think a quarterback should be the long-term move. What's best for this franchise. Also, move on from Goff's, cap number, get a rookie quarterback, spend that money on that defense. I think there's, a way to get a little bit of both here. But, taking that aside, if you were just a Lions fan, you're like, hey, nothing wrong with the offense. Why are we not pouring assets into the defense? Like that line of thinking, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. That makes a little bit more sense. So I can understand it. This Lions team just continues to move the ball. Again, Ben Johnson, ton of credit there. You get Jameson Williams. We talked about that on the hurry-up offense last week. I felt like he was destined to find the end zone if your draft book or your bet book, DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever your preference is if they had Jameson Williams anytime touchdown, I implored you to take it. It just was poetic justice, the guy who was taken at 12th overall, scores against the team that previously had the 12th overall pick in that draft and traded away, and then the Lions take him. So it just makes sense. It's just the narratives all line up. So anyways, Lions are playing good brand of football, and the defense has been able to patch together the last couple of weeks too, which certainly goes a long way. A defense that has not been able to do that is the Seattle Seahawks. They're down 3 spots. Like I said earlier when we were talking about Carolina, this team cannot stop the run to save their lives. And they got a big one this upcoming week against San Francisco, which, if my memory serves, and they are playing the 49ers, that could get ugly really quick. So it'll be interesting to see, what type of emphasis Pete Carroll puts on the run defensive side of his game plan next week, because, man, otherwise this game might be done in the first quarter. So Yeah, I still like the firepower. I still think Gino's been solid, even in his down weeks. I still think he's better than in a lot of ways some of the best of Gino that we saw from half decade plus ago. So I still like a lot of what this team has in place. But yeah, that run defense right now is really kind of pulling the air out of or pulling the wind out of the sails for this team as we get closer to the playoffs. Then we get the Patriots up a spot. Decided to switch, move the Patriots up, one place, bringing Seattle down one spot further. Originally, I had Seattle at 12, Patriots at 13, just because again, the thing with Kyler Murray, once first drive, I just feels like it derails the game entirely. It takes the air out of the stadium and everything. So, I decided to give the Patriots credit because, Mac Jones, they moved the ball pretty well. Damian Harris had a couple of really nice runs in there, which, he was doubtful coming into the game. So good to see him have that type of production. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson gets hurt pretty early on, which is disappointing, especially if you bet on him and his props this week. Oh, well. But, wanted to give the Patriots a little bit of love here, and the defense continues to be a really solid unit. Would have loved to seen what they looked like against Kyler Murray, but against Colt McCoy, they fared pretty well. So I'll give them the credit, bump them up a spot. Jets, they lost, but, it's another one of those games where, just like last week against the Vikings, where it's like, yeah, they lost, but they're showcasing they can hang with some of the best teams in the league. Depending on how you feel about the Vikings right now, maybe that's, a different conversation. But they show they can keep it within a one-score game with the Bills. And they even got the stop late, had less than a minute to go. Chance for Mike White to get the touchdown, the 2-point conversion. They continue to linger. I think that's what this team can do. And this is not the same Jets team of old, right? They're going to win close football games. And with Mike White, I think the offense is good enough to win against good teams. And, this occasion, spoiler alert, they went against the number 1 team in these power rankings, and they hung tough. So I don't want to knock them here. I'll keep them at 11. Dolphins down a couple spots. This is going to be an interesting team from an adjustment standpoint. What does Mike McDaniels pivot to? How does Tua, counteract? Especially go follow Ben Solak on Twitter. He's a great follow. But specifically look at a clip he posted yesterday and talking about how the Chargers were playing those wide receivers and where they were putting the robber basically that deep into the middle of the field, trying to take away those digs that Miami's had a ton of success with. Corners playing with inside leverage and again taking away the area of the field where Miami's had a ton of success. So. Ultimately what this, I think, comes down to is can you find something a little shorter, right? Because even on the broadcast, they talked about, linebackers sitting into a zone. If you normally do it 15, now I need you to do it at 20 yards. So can Miami get those linebackers a little bit further up the field? One, I think that starts with being able to run the ball between the tackles, something this team has not done all that well, all that consistently at least. A little bit shorter passing game. I'd like to see Mike Gesicki get worked into that mix. Now, obviously, not a great fit for necessarily Mike McDaniel. Looking for more of a Kittle type than a Gesicki type, but nonetheless, can he become an impact player and work that underneath stuff? Hill, Waddle can do that for sure. And then the last thing, Tua's going to have to make throws outside the hashes. Well, with his arm strength, I know that's a little bit of a concern, but he's going to have to because that's how you can negate that inside leverage, right, and force DBs to play Hill and Waddle honest, right? So I think if Miami can make those adjustments and the offense might be able to get back on track, but otherwise, man, I'm kind of concerned if that middle of the field and that inside leverage takes away the big plays of this offense. Does Miami just completely lose its luster? Because their defense, I think, played okay against the Chargers, but not well enough, right? And I don't think that team is built in a way to win with their defense, right? The theory was, Tua, those wide receivers, Mike McDaniels, that's why they should be winning games. So I hope this offense can adjust because they're really fun to watch when they're clicking at all cylinders. Then we get the Ravens. I'm going to stay here at 9. Battle the backup quarterbacks, like I said earlier. Tyler Huntley against Mitch Trubisky for the most part in the game. And then we get Anthony Brown for a decent chunk of the game as well. So ultimately a third-string quarterback against a backup. So yeah, not all that pretty from that standpoint. But the Ravens defense, ever since getting Roquan Smith, has just found another level. And Patrick Queen has been freed up to play some really great football. Both those linebackers come away with a turnover in this game, which, if you're a Ravens fan, it's been a while since you've been able to see, that type of inside linebacker play. It feels like a continuous year-over-year need. So that's got to be a great thing to be able to watch and root for if you're a Baltimore fan. And, you got enough offense. And that's really what it's going to have to be, right? Because this is a team banged up on the outside with their wide receiver room, and obviously now playing with the third-string quarterback. Great to see J.K. Dobbins return to this game. I think that'll help out the run game a ton, especially just getting a few more chunk and explosive plays in the mix. Dobbins, did that on that first drive. Maybe it was the second drive for the Ravens where he finds the end zone. Chunk play, then he punches it in from 5 yards out. That type of element added into the run game will certainly help. But yeah, when you have a third-string quarterback, lack of wide receiver talent right now, yeah, you're just going to have to scrap together. And, this is going to be an interesting challenge. Can the Ravens find a way to score 20 every week? And can their defense hold teams below 20? That feels like what it's going to have to be until Lamar comes back. Anyways, let's move on to our top 8 now. The Chargers up 4 spots. They were just at 10. I moved them down outside the top 10 to the 12 spot. And I'm like, this team, I don't know what I'm going to get week to week. And that continues to be the case, unfortunately. But here, it's really impressive fashion, right? You get Mike Williams back, and all of a sudden that offense looks like it's at full strength once again, which, if you're a Chargers fan, God, if they stay healthy, this team becomes really interesting now. They are right now positioned in the 7th seed. They, with that win, knocked the Jets out. So that Jets-Chargers, fight for the last spot in the AFC playoff picture is going to be a ton of fun to watch down the stretch. But also, I think the defense, part of it's, the game plan, what Staley, taking away the middle of the field, the inside leverage. But Michael Davis had the best game of his career. And even the front 7, right? Like, Miami did not run the ball all that efficiently. Yeah, maybe as the game progressed a little bit on and you're kind of inviting the run a little bit more, even more than the Chargers already probably do. But nonetheless, I think the Chargers defense played their best game of the season as well. So as good as the offense looked with, the whole core back together, and Justin Herbert, that looked like a game where Herbert, if you were somebody who, maybe had him as your preseason MVP, this is the game you thought all year would basically look like, right? And I think back to, and the broadcast did a great job highlighting it, but that throw Herbert had to Keenan Allen, and Allen turns around and immediately points at him, just because it was like, dude, how did Herbert make that throw, right? Like, that's a one-of-one type of thing. That's what an elite quarterback can do, and that's what we saw on display against the Miami defense. So if you're a Chargers fan, you're hoping this is kind of the beginning of a late season push here for LA. Vikings down a couple spots. Yeah, yikes. Turns out Vegas is a genius. The Lions were favored by 2.5, and it felt like everyone and their mom was saying, oh, how weird is that? Minnesota's not getting any respect, getting points when they're 10-2, they're number 2 seed in the NFC. Well, I guess it makes sense, right? That defense continues to be a major concern. Ed Donatell's going to have to come up with some fixes. And we're, against the Jets, they won the red zone, right? New York makes it in the red zone 6 times, but Minnesota only gives up 1 touchdown. I think the Lions were uniquely, kind of structured roster-wise in a way to beat that, right? Jamal Williams, great, between the tackles runner. And then also you give up, 41-yard bomb to Jameson Williams. You don't even have to factor in the red zone, right? So problems on a lot of different respects there for the Minnesota defense, which is definitely concerning. And, if not for Justin Jefferson, being Superman, there wasn't a whole lot offensively that was really impressive either. So, that being said, Justin Jefferson was robbed of a touchdown, and in turn, I was robbed of a lot of potential bet winnings. So that's really frustrating. Let's stop talking about it. It's going to make me pissed, but the NFL owes me money, basically. This Minnesota team's going to have to figure it out. As great as Justin Jefferson is, right? Like, and he really should have had 250 yards in that touchdown. But, the rest of the offense is going to have to find, Adam Thielen, I know he's kind of taking that step back, and he's starting to get older, but who's that secondary weapon? TJ Hawkinson was extremely quiet. Yeah, so still things to be figured out there on the offensive side for Minnesota, and especially on the defensive side. So Donatell's got a ton of work there. Bengals move up a place. Not the prettiest of all wins, but, T. Higgins literally sneaks on the field, but only plays 1 snap. Tyler Boyd's a little banged up. It was basically Jamar Chase and him only. Joe Mixon obviously still in there as well, but I think the Bengals kind of just managed this game. They played it to they did just enough right, basically, to win. So I do want to give him credit there. And, Lou Anarumo, another week where I'm singing his praises to DC. As impressive as this Bengals offense can be week to week, their defense is just so solid at all 3 levels, across the defensive line, at the linebacker position, and they're making do in the secondary. Jesse Bates gets an interception this week. And, I really thought this team would feel the loss of Chidobe Awuzie just because of how good of a player he has been since getting into Cincinnati. But give a ton of credit to Anarumo and that staff and the defense as a whole. They have been able to patch it up pretty well. I don't want to say he's not missed, but they've been able to kind of plug that hole and keep moving forward. So, the Bengals definitely deserve to move up a spot. 49ers joined into the top 5, and, they dominated Tampa Bay. And, Tampa Bay's offense has been, a head scratcher all year long, but their defense has had games where they've looked really, really good. So, like I said earlier, about the only thing that went wrong for San Francisco was Deebo Samuel getting hurt. So, hopefully he's able to, make it back for the postseason run. It sounds like, his regular season's pretty much over, but hopefully he's back in time for the postseason. This team can be, as close to 100% as possible, aside from the quarterback position, because, I'd almost just want to see Brock Purdy try to lead this team of superstars at their respective positions to a Super Bowl run. It could be fun. But really good team. Their defense continues to play great football. They blew out the Bucs. So into the top 5 they go. And then 1 through 4 is going to stay the same. The Chiefs, that game kind of weirdly got close, which is a little uncomfortable, I'm sure, if you're a Kansas City fan. That defense definitely still has some work to do. And when you're giving up the best game to Russell Wilson's season, I'm sure a lot of Kansas City fans are saying the same thing. So still a great team, but some things to figure out. And this wasn't necessarily the most impressive showing this week. Maybe in the first half, but then it started to get a little weirdly close down the line. Then they got the Cowboys here at 3. Another team where it's like, did you really want that game to be that good? Obviously not, right? Like, you didn't want the Texans to give you a scare, but when push came to shove, Dak was able to leave that 2-minute drive and get you the win. So that's big. And ultimately, I kind of like it even to, the Eagles, the next team we're going to talk about. That 17-16 win in Indianapolis. Like, even now we look at that game and it's like, yeah, Indy's really not that good. So why was that a 1-point game? Sometimes teams give you scares, and when you're one of the best teams in the league, you have a massive bullseye on your back. Not to get too emotional and locker room kind of philosophical here, but I think when you do have that target on your back, even those bottom feeders, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, those teams towards the bottom of the standings, they're like, hey, no one's giving us a shot. Let's give them a scare. Let's go. Let's do it. Houston, Dallas playing the same state. I'm sure there's a ton of pride there on the line. So I'm not surprised the Texans gave them a good run for their money. But ultimately, Dallas won that game. And sometimes you just got to win games, even if you didn't necessarily play your best game of the year. And maybe if you weren't the best team on the field that day. And that's exactly what I think Dallas did this weekend. Then Philadelphia, they 100% were the better team in this game. I mean, they obliterated the Giants. I mean, from the beginning of the game on, it was just rough. I think it was like 27-7 just after halftime. Yeah, Devonta Smith, big game. Jalen Hurts has got to be the MVP frontrunner. The stat lines he's put up the last 2 weeks are bananas. Miles Sanders finds the end zone twice. The defense completely shuts down the Giants. I think part of it, New York's obviously regressing to the mean. They're kind of coming down to reality, but the Eagles just outright dominated that game, and they deserve credit for it. And then the Bills coming in at number 1, not necessarily as pretty as the Eagles, but I think against a whole lot better of an opponent. No disrespect again to the Giants, but I think the Jets are a little bit more legit. That's why they rank higher in these power rankings. But the Bills continue to find a way to win these close games. At least we didn't get the turnover, bad decisions there from Josh Allen. I think he cleaned it up a little bit there. Offense still wasn't necessarily pretty, but it was cold, it was windy, he had some snow, had some rain. And, even if they do win games 20-12, I think it's almost like a Philadelphia where they can win games like this, where hey, if we're going to lean on Josh Allen as a runner and get enough plays on the ground, and that's how we have to win this game, and lean on our defense, then so be it. But we can also win this game 38-35. So I think part of the reason this game is close and low scoring shouldn't be maybe something we look at negatively towards the Bills. It's more so, hey, that's the type of game this became, and this is what the game script molded into being, and the Bills found a way to win it, right? They can win in multiple ways, kind of the same stuff we're saying about the Eagles. So that's going to do it for my Week 15 NFL Power Rankings. Love to have your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Do you have the Bills at 1? I'd love to have your thoughts. Love to talk some football with you down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, help me out a ton. If you're new right here, want to see more football content, just hit that big red subscribe button. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.